Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you this week. There's some updates to the Ford Maverick, and there's a special street truck version called the Lobo. Super excited to talk about that. The Cadillac Sollei cracks the top off of future of Cadillac design. Really beautiful concept car. We'll talk about that, as well as the 2025 Escalade. We've been driving some pretty interesting things like the Fiat 500e, the Honda Civic Hybrid, the Hyundai Elantra Hybrid, the Infiniti QX80, and the Subaru WRX STI. Hang on, I'll explain what I mean by that. So with that, let's bring in road test editor, Zach Palmer. How's it going, man?
It's going good. It's August, which means that's Dream Cruise month. Things are about to get fun here in Michigan. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's basically every weekend, there's a good Cars and Coffee, car show, pop-up event. There's actually a bar on my corner that just sometimes on Friday nights they'll do like a pretty solid car show. The bar itself, I don't know if go either way on that, but the car show seems pretty decent. So you can walk up there and check out what's going on. So it's a good time of the year in Michigan.
I would argue one of the best, frankly, especially if you're a car enthusiast.
All right. Well, if you're a car enthusiast, let's go with the Lobo first. I mean, this is the street-oriented truck. News editor Joel Stocksdale covered this thing. If you look at the pictures, I think it looks sweet. It kind of reminds me of like if Ford still had a significant presence at SEMA in Las Vegas, this is something they would do. So if you check out the Maverick, obviously check out the story on site. You got the big wheels, it's lowered, and of course, upgrades to the brakes, suspension, and cooling, as our subhead says. I think this thing's awesome. Super excited to drive it. And I think this was when Ford basically brought back the Maverick as a truck a few years ago and tried to explain to everybody, hey, we don't really need the Focus because we thought we had sort of gone as far as we could in that segment with that type of car. This is what they meant. They meant, hey, we can bring the Maverick in, we can attract new buyers, we can get enthusiast buyers, and we can just have a product that's a little more compelling than, hey, a Ford Focus, which, hey, not to knock on it, but it is what it is. It was what it was. But I'm super excited about the Lobo. Some mid-cycle refreshes for the Maverick itself, pretty significant as well. But just real quick, what do you think of this Lobo?
Yeah, so the Lobo is kind of what I was hoping that Ford would give us with the Maverick platform since I drove it. First time I drove it was with the EcoBoost 2-liter turbo. And what struck me right off the bat was just how small, light and fun it was to toss around. And I was like, yo, Ford could really make a fun sport truck here. And it looks like we have the makings of one without a doubt. It's not a bigger engine. It's not more power, but it does have some of the hard point things that, you might want to do to modify just like a regular Maverick off the line. The suspension, you also get that torque vectoring rear diff, which is really big. And the transmission also looks like it's going to be a lot more fun to play around with. And of course the looks. There really haven't been a lot of sport trucks out there. Ford has obviously had a history of doing them with the Lightning. I wouldn't necessarily call this a Lightning because that thing always had like a very modified powertrain, but this is a really cool step into, almost a Maverick ST. They're obviously calling it a Lobo, so it's its own thing because it's not quite as extreme as, maybe what a Ford ST product is. But no, I'm super excited about this thing. And it's what the Maverick has really needed. And I honestly think they're going to find a lot of takers for it because it's super rad.
The standard Lobo will cost you $36,595, and then the high one, that's like the top trim, as high implies, is $42,000. So not cheap for a Maverick, but I think if this is sort of like what you're looking for, it's there for you. And I think we see this with some of the enthusiast-oriented versions of economy cars probably isn't the right, term here, but, basic offerings that, if you want to see them in their highest evolution, this is, you got to pay a little bit for it. I mean, personally, I would be more interested in like, a hybrid or something, one of the lower spec ones that are, relatively affordable. If I were in the market for a car, I think the Maverick would
Yeah,
be one that I would look at. It's really something that it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife in that segment. And I think, the Hyundai Santa Cruz certainly has some room to get in here, like the Lobo. I don't really see GM doing anything though with the Colorado or the Canyon. It's just not really they're bigger. They would almost have to create a new product. So for now, Ford really has the market to itself with the Lobo, and I think that's a great thing.
yeah, same. I mean, and all the other updates that they did for 2025 here are also like super impressive. I mean, they take a great truck and make it much greater. Like the new hybrid all-wheel drive, that's huge.
Yeah,
I
that's a
feel
game changer.
like obviously like there's the truck has kind of just been hamstrung from the start. Like you have this awesome hybrid powertrain, but then you don't offer all-wheel drive with it. They're all front-wheel drive with just 2,000 pounds of towing capacity. Um, and even with that, like they sold like crazy
Yeah.
for great reason because you have this pickup that can fit 4 or 5 people in it, get 40 plus mpg, have a bed, is easy to park and take places. But now you have every reason in the world to go get it if for whatever reason you need all-wheel drive, you need more towing. There's all these buts that I think Ford has kind of answered at this point. Yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to see a big resurgence in more and more Maverick buyers out there because of a all-wheel drive hybrid and 4,000 pounds of towing.
Yeah, 4,000 pounds is not nothing. That's, I think, a very healthy level for the Maverick to be at. The upgrades to the interior pretty nice as well. I think Maverick has actually always had a creative interior. Like whenever I have driven one, I've you get in there and you're like, okay, the materials are what they are. There's nothing crazy, mind blowing, but there's a lot of vehicles in all segments that are fairly expensive, and they make I would say expensive interiors not look as good as the price might say. The Maverick is the opposite. You get in there and it's like, oh yeah, okay, it's a decent deal. I know what I'm getting here. And maybe it's about setting expectations. But you get in there and you're like, this is pretty nice. I get that this material is, a little plasticky or rubbery or whatever, but you're willing to forgive that because of one, the price, and two, the shapes, the way it's laid out, and then just sort of the creative designs. So yeah, I think we're both pretty big fans of the Maverick.
Yeah, without a doubt. I know, like if I were in the market, I would probably be going to put my money down on a hybrid all-wheel drive at this point because it's going to be a game changer, I think.
All right, so let's move on to the news segment to the Cadillac Sollei. I went to the General Motors Tech Center in Warren, Michigan. Historic, very large, sprawling campus north of Detroit. They don't, frankly, invite us out there all that much. So when they do, it's usually significant. And this specifically was Cadillac House is what they're calling it. I think it's called Vanderbilt House, which is a nod to one of the first women Cadillac designers, which is super cool. On the campus, the design campus. So it's like you're in there, you look out, you see the fountain, you see the courtyard, and it's really an impressive place. I would put it up there against any automaker headquarters or design place that I've frankly been, or any frankly corporate headquarters I've been to. It's a really impressive place. Dates back to the late 50s. So that's the setting. The car is this beautiful open air concept. It's based sort of on the Celestiq platform. They have the same dimensions and powertrain. But I asked 2 different GM executives, hey, are you going to build this? And they basically said, we can't say anything. They didn't say no, but they also didn't say yes. So I think it's, absolutely gorgeous. They're going to show it at Pebble Beach, but basically in small events, sort of, maybe not necessarily like totally in the general public. But, just absolutely gorgeous. The color is called Manila Cream, which dates back, first used in 1957, 58. It does have that kind of like mid-century Cadillac vibe, big wheels pushed to the corners. Yeah, I mean, I think so the way I would just to bring it together here, I think I would put the odds at like 50-50, maybe 60-40 that they do this because it's just genetically, it's basically a Celestic. And General Motors and Cadillac specifically are getting into this sort of uh, coach building model where they're going to charge like well into the six figures for certain cars and let their buyers pick out exactly what they want. You probably need more than one car to make that justifiable. And to me, a convertible makes all the sense in the world. So,
I am 100% with you there. I know that this is something that we've really been debating in person on Slack many times over, sort of saying like, man, this thing really needs to be built. Will Cadillac do it? Will they not? I mean, the Celestic relation is of course the best indication, like you said, that hey, this could totally, absolutely happen. Um, and I have a feeling that Cadillac has heard from journalists and us all over that they need to absolutely figure out a way to make it happen because yeah, like it is a stunning car. I do really love that color, and they don't need to make a lot of them because I mean just like the Celestic, it'll be $300,000 plus easily. And I mean if we're talking just like a personal, I mean you could even bring people in the back because it's like a weirdly large back seat, but just like as a personal luxury vehicle as an EV, I'm not sure that that there's anything cooler that you could buy out there. Like there's the Rolls-Royce Spectre, that's neat and all, but like if you want like a mega expensive luxury convertible, like this would be the one. This would be the only one, and yeah, no, they need to build this. It would bring like huge cachet to the brand, which is sort of what the Celestic is doing as well. But to have a line of vehicles like this in the same vein as like a Bentley or a Rolls Royce, I don't know. It would just bring a lot of energy to American car buyers, and I think it would get people excited about, hey, I can go have like the best car in the world again, and it's a Cadillac. So, and obviously, like, who doesn't want a convertible? If you have a lot of money, add this to your garage.
yeah, well said. It's if anything, it's even more stunning in person. That's where you really get some of like the lighting elements up front and the interior pieces. It's really impressive, and it does move. It's a concept car. It does move, but it doesn't. Even though it's convertible, they didn't bother to actually build a roof for it, which I thought was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, so that's a Soleil. Check it out. I wrote the story a couple weeks ago at this point, but we definitely wanted to touch on that. I think that's a good segue to the 2025 Cadillac Escalade. Uh, Man, the wheels are enormous. So 24 inches. Screens are enormous. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's frankly the Escalade straight out of central casting, as you would expect. The V is back, which is kind of cool. Um, yeah, I think this is what they needed to do, kind of a mid-cycle refresh to keep it fresh against things like, new things that are coming into the segment, like, hey, the QX80 and the Lincoln Navigator that's already there. So, just some extra, they beefed it up, and I think it's solid. It's what they needed to do.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. They added a number of the things that are on the Escalade IQ. So basically, the interiors are almost identical at this point. It has Cadillac's new like wall-to-wall screen situation, like a 55-inch screen display, which is like bizarrely huge. I have still yet to see this setup in person, but just in photos, it is like completely dominating of the dash and quite the stunning look. It's kind of funny that they've gone to this so quickly because like when Escalade was this new one was released a few years ago, um, there was a ton of fanfare around. Oh, this is our first OLED panel. We have this really cool curved OLED thing. There's three separate screens all in one, and that didn't last very long. That is the sort of thing that I would almost expect Cadillac to try and carry on as like this super unique thing for the Cadillac. But hey, technology moves so quickly these days. We've got something even better and grander than this really cool OLED setup. So now we have all screens across the entire board and another screen below it. Um, and yeah, just like big has always been the theme of the Escalade, and it just looks like they're sticking with it. And you touched on the V still being a thing, which I think is awesome. Just the fact that, hey, you can still get the supercharged V8. This was frankly one of my favorite performance SUVs I've ever driven. And you can put air quotes around performance as well, because like the thing doesn't handle, it doesn't really stop all that great. Like it just goes and makes stupid noise, which it's basically like a muscle car. It's like a modern muscle car, and God, it's so much fun to drive. Just pure silliness. So the fact that you're gonna, you can still get it with this refresh, and you'll be able to get it for who knows how long at this point. Props to GM and Cadillac. Let's keep the supercharged V8s alive.
Yeah, save the supercharged V8s along with the manuals. So from one of the largest vehicles you can buy to one of the smallest. So this is the Fiat 500e. We both have driven it. You a little more recently than I have. Although I took it to, it's funny, I ran into another local journalist, and he was like, I knew there must be somebody else who lived on this side of town because I saw that 500e and that had to be a press car. And I forget where I was, maybe the pool or something. But I drove a red one. It definitely stood out. It's just like such a little go-kart. It's kind of fun. It it's roomier than I recall, like the old 500s being. Definitely has that same look, which I think is good. And it's cool, man. So what did you do with it? Did you put like 10 people in it,
That would be fun. No, yeah, I must have had the same one as you, the 500e red edition that obviously is painted red. But no, I think I maxed out at 3 people. So I did put someone in the back seat, which that's a hard thing to do in and of
Yeah.
itself, to try and put an adult back there. But they fit, not without complaint. They were definitely displeased about being back there, and I don't really blame them, because it is very small. It is an extremely small car. But to your point about it actually being fun to drive, like that is why it is so fun to drive, because it only weighs about 3,000 pounds, and for an EV that is like shockingly light. I mean, that is of course because it has a very small battery pack, only a 42 kilowatt hour battery pack. 149 miles of range. I drove it enough that I got it down to about 25 miles of range, and then I went to a charging station. As a small aside, I had one of the most eventful times at a charging station in recent memory.
Of course you did, right?
Yeah, it's like every single time I go to like an EVgo or an Electrify America, it's just like you just want to rip your hair out to a certain extent. No, I went to an EVgo that said it had a stall open. You get there, of course, that one stall that is open is actually broken, so no one can charge there. There's 2 cars on it, one Bolt, one Volvo. Of course, they both just plugged in. I have like 25 miles of range. The next closest one on the app says that all of the stalls are out of service. So that's great. I guess I got to stick it out. I wait like 30 minutes for these folks to be done charging. And then like as soon as someone leaves, like someone skirts in ahead of me, which was like, okay, cool, bro. And so I actually talked to him. I was like, hey, I thought I was here before you. And he's like, no, man, I was here before you. I'm like, okay, I don't want to get into an argument here at the EV charging station. So I just go and wait some more, Then eventually I plug in. I mean, I got there and I was probably out of there like an hour and a half later.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst.
It was rough, and that's just like a microcosm for charging in the Midwest, and it's not the same like that everywhere around the country, I'd say, with how many chargers we have. But Metro Detroit just simply doesn't have enough, because people were stacking up behind me too. Like there was a good like 4 to 5 car wait deep after I was done, and it's rough. Everyone out there charging these Chevy Bolts, some guy in a Mini Cooper SE. I mean, I was just as bad in this Fiat 500 that is also very slow charging, 80, 85 kilowatt max. I mean, it is slow charging, but because of that small battery, like I was only plugged in for like 25, 30 minutes and then I was good to go. Um, Now that said, obviously you plug in for that amount of time and all right, I got up to, I think it was like 98 miles of range on like an 80% charge. So you're not getting necessarily a lot of miles for being there for a while. But charging aside, really, really did like this car a lot. You know, it so much fun to drive. The handling, the steering, uh, the throttle response, like all of it, you know, feels sort of geared to an enthusiast, which I really really enjoyed. The interior is probably like one of the downsides. Like it is very cheap and plasticky feeling inside there. It's not great, I guess, to say the least. And no, the hardest thing I think for me to get over with this car is just the price, and that like it is an extremely small car, and it costs $34,000. And I think that Americans, I mean, whether it's an EV or not an EV, at a car this size, this car needs to cost $25,000 or less. I feel for people to really get into something that's this small. I mean, it would be such a lovely city vehicle. I think if you're in like a big city, Chicago, New York, and whatnot, like you needed a car, you're not going to go very far. You can plug in somewhere. Okay, great. This is the car for you. It's a very niche vehicle, I feel. But I think that there are some use cases for it. You just gotta be okay with the price that, you know, arguably after this car does not get the federal tax credit, and like you can get like a Model 3 with like nicely equipped Model 3 for like this price after the $7,500 tax credit is already taken into account. You know, there's some other things like a Hyundai Kona electric. If you get like a base one, you're getting close. Um, so it's a tough one, I think, from a financial perspective. Just a very use case based vehicle that like, all right, it's going to find a person here, a person there. Don't expect a lot of them to sell though.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of like almost like a superfluous luxury in that sense. You know, like you want this sort of styled up thing, and you're willing to pay, I don't know, $10,000 more than perhaps you should. You
Yeah.
like the size. I will say the interior, they try. Like they take like the plastics and they're like red. You know, it's got a little bit of that Mini Cooper vibe, that kind of old, like, you know,
Yep.
quirky, cheeky feel in there, which I think is, again, it's Fiat 500. I sort of expect that. Um, yeah, I mean, to me, it's the use cases New York City or Rome, you know, and
Yeah.
even like driving it around here, it's like the suburban roads where I live are kind of big and open, so you don't feel too like, oh, I'm gonna get taken out by this semi, but it's still a little weird sometimes when you're fighting for traffic and you're lower than basically everything and smaller, so it's tough. Um,
I had a great time every time that I had to park the thing, honestly. Like I would just like chuck it into whatever the tiniest parking spot is wherever. Like it was just a blast, honestly. I mean, because it can fit anywhere that you want it to fit. And that's, you know, I also felt very tiny in like highway lanes. Like I was going on 696 and 75 in it, and I was like, wow, I sort of feel like I'm in my old Acura Integra. I'm low to the ground. Everything around me is way bigger, and now you just feel like this little agile thing. And there's a certain freedom in that, but this is, yeah, like you said, this is a city car. Is where it will definitely thrive.
so let's go up, guess a couple segments in size here and talk about the Elantra Hybrid and the Civic Hybrid, which I think definitely could be cross-shopped against each other. I'll give you a breather because you've been talking a bit, and I'll talk about the Elantra Hybrid. Uh, Pretty nice car. Mine was they called it sort of like Amazon gray, which was kind of like a greenish gray, very styled up car. I feel like Hyundai is getting its design mojo back a little bit. And, we're seeing it in things like the Elantra, which is great. Out the door, mine was $30,810. So considerably better value than that Fiat 500. Fuel economy is just insane. 49 in the city. You want to talk about a good city car. 52 on the highway, 50 combined. I took it, let's see, what did I do with this thing? I took it to Ann Arbor and I went tubing on the Huron River, which was a lot of fun. We got a lot of like the inner tubes in the car. They were partially filled, inflated. So a little more room than you might expect. We had 4 people in there with the tubes. So, the interior was a little tight at that point, but that was more activity based than the car's fault. Solid highway car, very fuel efficient, reasonably quiet, sporty-ish for the segment. Probably not as sporty as the Civic that you're going to talk about here, but fine. I don't frankly drive that many sedans anymore. So what I do, it's almost like the sedan gets the default sort of sporty-ish vibe. So there's that. Definitely loaded up with all the stuff Hyundai gives you right away. Yeah, I kind of like the navigation system. It had the 10.25 nav system in there, which used a little bit. I don't love Hyundai's overall infotainment system, but I guess I could use that to describe 3/4 of the infotainment systems out there. So pretty solid in that sense. It definitely got me where I needed to go. And then just to drill into the powertrain a little bit, it is a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder hybrid setup with a 6-speed dual clutch, which I thought that was kind of cool. So I really liked my weekend in this thing. I think it's a great value. I know we've had a lot of very hot metal coming through the fleet, but when this showed up, I kind of looked at the board. I was like, nope, I'm not looking to trade or anything. This is fine. I like this. This is just a basic vehicle, good price. So I very much enjoyed my week and weekend with it.
Yeah, and you're probably getting very near the sort of fuel economy that this Civic Hybrid that I was driving
Yeah.
is meant to be rated for. Honda has claimed nearish 50 mpg with it. I was not quite getting that. I mean, I was driving pretty conservatively, and I was getting right around 40 mpg. I wasn't necessarily mad about that though. Like that is really really good fuel economy. But no, I mean, speaking of just horsepower and speed, 200 horsepower and 232
Wow.
pound-feet of torque out of this Civic Hybrid. So considerably quicker than that Elantra Hybrid, and you really really feel it. It is Honda's direct drive hybrid system that we see in the Accord CR-V Hybrid. So it drives like super smoothly. It of course sort of feels like just pure electric drive, and just the way that the engine revs to sort of drive that battery and then electric motor is quite natural in the way that the revs rise and fall. It's not loud. It's not thrashy. It's just a nice, simple, classic engine sound that like everyone, like regular car buyers, when they hop into it, they'll be like, yeah, sounds and feels like whatever other car I had, just a lot smoother in the way that it accelerates. So that's great. I think, just from a pure acceleration standpoint, this thing is probably about as quick as the Civic Si is now these days, which, obviously the Civic Si, just about 205 horsepower. Not a barn burner by any means. So it'll be interesting, when we see some instrumented testing on the hybrid. I am going to be curious if it actually is quicker in a straight line than the Si, which I don't know. We'll see if Honda is going to allow that to happen. I think that they're dangerously close at this point. But no, beyond the actual hybridness of the engine, like the Civic is the same Civic that it has been, only a little better for 2025, because this is also the mid-cycle refresh. The biggest update I think for me is the infotainment system. The previous one was like not a great system at all. It was somewhat laggy. It was like a fully Honda native system. This new one is an Android Automotive based system, which means Google Maps for the navigation system, Google Assistant voice assistant, Google Play Store to download a bunch of apps, and it's all a lot snappier and smoother. So that is definitely, I think, a huge upgrade that you get when you do go for the 2025, and of course the hybrid, which at this point I think has got to be my favorite Civic trim outside, of course, the SI and Type R. It's sort of like when I drove the new generation Accord, and they dropped the 2-liter turbo. Uh, Honda has dropped the 1.5-liter turbo from the regular Civic for this refresh, and both now the Accord and the Civic, the hybrid is without a doubt my favorite powertrain. Super efficient, fun. It's the right balance, I think, for most people that don't want to step fully up to like an SI or Type R.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's I don't know if I'd go quite that far that it's my favorite. I mean, I drove the Type R on
Oh no,
Tuesday, and
I'm not saying it's more than the Type R or anything.
yeah,
I guess just among like the base Civic
yeah.
powertrains, like
I know
you can
what you're
get this
saying.
2-liter.
Yeah. Now, the Civic family, as they call it on their website, is quite large. You can really spec up or spec down the Civic in any number of ways. As low as like 24 grand and all the way up to, the Type R, which is 45. So, uh, it's I think the Civic is about in as good a position as it's been. They had those sort of dark days in 2012 when they made the car almost too much of an economy car. They really had the interior stripped out. And since that time, they've really built it back up. They've added all sorts of different options, new and exciting performance models. They've brought some back. And I think they've done a great job with the design in the, inside and out. So uh, this is another one that, I don't know, I would say from a drivability, it sounds like you have the car for you. From the, maybe overall value and efficiency, the Elantra is tough to beat in this segment as well, though.
Yeah, it honestly is a really tough question between those two. And I think that a lot of it will come down to styling and just like
Yeah,
which one you like the look of more. I think that the Elantra is a bit more extroverted, and like, hey, look at me, I have this big grill, all of these sharp edges and creases, whereas the Civic is like, all right, very laid back, staid, nothing too crazy going on. The refresh does have, there's like a hint of the Civic Type R look up front with the front bumper side
yeah,
intakes.
you can see that.
Yeah, they went a little bit more aggressive with the refresh. You're still not going to mistake it for a Type R. There's no doubt about that. Especially since we recently had them parked right next to each other. It's like, yeah, big difference here. But no, I think that that little refresh was certainly warranted and nice. And I don't know, if it were my money, I would probably be putting it down on the Civic Hybrid, probably just purely because of the way that it drives. I love Honda's hybrid system, and the fact that it's now in the Civic with as much power and as light a car as it is, I think is a huge win.
All right. So speaking of vehicles that are not light in any way, this is the Infiniti QX80. That is an absolute beast of a vehicle. It's funny, we keep sort of ping-ponging between very small cars and then very large SUVs. So we've got the Infiniti, the Escalade, smaller hybrids, and then the Fiat 500. But uh, this thing is quite large. This is the new version for 2025. Infinity gives you a ton of style, that's for sure. It's something when we saw the concept, I think that was Pebble Beach last year, I want to say. It was actually one of the more trafficked stories on our site. People were really into it. And I think they showed it at maybe an auto show as well. So this is basically that style translates to the production version. Um, but what did you think of this thing?
Yeah, man. So it's been a minute since there's been an Infinity that I've been really excited to get behind the wheel of and see, and this is definitely the one. The one that showed up in my driveway was the Autograph trim, which is the highest top trim in a pretty fancy, showy gray paint option, and it had $112,000 sticker on it, which that is quite the steep price, honestly, for like this big luxury SUV. So high expectations off the bat for it. As far as just the pure aesthetics go, it is huge. It is grand. It is expensive looking. I honestly think that the design might be one of its best characteristics. The lighting in front, the lighting in rear, the pop out door handles, it all feels appropriately upscale for that price. I love the fact that the Autograph has this really cool script and in like right below the rear window to call out the trim. It's a really nice touch there that I haven't seen from Infiniti before, and it's sort of their their design maturing and getting better and sort of getting with the times, which is fantastic. And then I hopped in, and like most big luxury SUVs these days, big wall of screens is directly in front of you. The climate control panel is controlled by its separate screen that is sort of attached to the center console. So like right off the bat, like great first impression. Like it has all of the tech, the leather and luxury in all of the features are there, so to speak. Get it in, start driving it. It's got a new 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 instead of the old V8, and a new 9-speed automatic. Super smooth, both of those. I think this would be a great car to sort of be toted around in. The throttle is just buttery smooth in action. You can drive it smoothly. You can drive it quickly if you wanted to. So I think that they really dialed in the powertrain tuning. That was great, and it feels a good bit quicker and just a lot more off the line than that sort of lazy V8 that it had before. And it's actually sort of funny. The first time that I hopped on it, I was like, "Oh wow, this sounds like the Nissan Z," because the engine is certainly related to the 3-liter twin turbo V6 that is in that car. So that was just sort of a funny thing that you notice when you first hop on it.
You're up
So
on your
all of that,
powertrains when you can pull that factoid off. That is some serious, some top shelf knowledge. Let's put it that
it's
way.
yeah, it was honestly so funny. Just the fact that it sort of sounds exactly like that. Um, and so all of that was positive. And then I guess I'll sort of get to the negative here, because there is of course the ride is just not quite there, I guess. So this is a big luxury through body on frame SUV. I sort of expect it to ride super comfortably like a Cadillac Escalade, Ford Expedition, Lincoln Navigator, like any of those big guys, and it unfortunately just doesn't. It's a very, very flinty ride. Sort of crashes and bangs over bumps. Like drives like a truck, I guess, that needs some better tuning in the suspension department. It is just like you have this big, you're ensconced in this big luxury leather place, and it just doesn't ride and drive like I feel like it should. Um, so that's definitely the big negative there. I know I was editing our first drive, and that was called out, and I was like, man, it surely can't be that bad. And like when I drove it, yeah, it definitely feels like it needs some finer tuning here. But no, like that was the one big negative. Some other small things that I didn't like, that climate control panel for the temperature. When you press it, so it's one of those that you kind of have to press into. It's like a haptic thing that you have to like give some pressure behind your finger. The screen creaks a bit when you press it, which is again, not exactly the refinement that I was hoping for in this thing. Like if it's going to creak, maybe just make it like a light tap of a touch, but you really have to press it to make the buttons work. So small things like that. The third row, a lot more accessible than it was before. Second row, extremely luxurious in this autograph trim. Again, you have a big screen back there, as you'd expect. So I don't know, like there's some high highs in this car, and also I think some real low points that I think Infiniti still has to work on. So good car, not quite a great car quite yet. So we'll see. I'll I'll be excited to hear when you eventually get your hands on a QX80 to hear what you think of the overall package here. It is obviously a huge upgrade from what we had before, which was a very, very aging vehicle at this point. So a necessary update to modernize it.
Yeah, I'm very interested to get behind the wheel of it. I've always thought the QX80 had a little bit of room to run that made it different from, say, the Escalade and the Navigator and some other things in this segment. It did have a pretty unique identity, so I'll be interested to see, when I get behind the wheel of this thing, if it sort of maintains that. Certainly looking at it, it clearly does. Um, but I would struggle to put it ahead of the Cadillac and the Lincoln for sure, as well as other just frankly large vehicles, whether they're body on frame or not, from other luxury brands. But I mean, I think Infiniti's going to do what it's always done, which is have an interesting powertrain, apparently derived from the Z, which is cool. Style the thing up, and then give you this interior that at times is overwhelming. I mean, I remember back in the day we had a long termer at Auto Week, and I basically lived in that thing for a while, just because it was so big and my apartment was flooded. So it was not that bad to if you needed to change before you were going somewhere, or put the seats down and sleep while the guys are vacuuming out your apartment. So yeah. So all right, so let's transition over to the WRX with some STI goodies on it. This is, I think, a nice way to take a long termer and kind of turn up the wick a little bit, tweak it, give it a little bit of a different flavor. Initially, honestly, the sound is not my jam. It adds this like deep bass that I didn't love. And there's some other stuff, but why don't we start with that? How do you think this thing sounds?
Yeah. So I honestly haven't driven it much since we had those mods, but I have been with it with our news editor Joel Stockdale, and I did hear it. He revved it up for me. I sat inside, heard the extra bassiness, and I think I'm definitely with you on like initial impressions. That STI exhaust that we added didn't necessarily add like a lot of flavor in
Yeah.
the actual like just, oh, this is a great sound. This is like that classic Subaru sound. No, it's just like extra loud and bassy. So like right off the bat, I'm not sure that I would necessarily recommend the exhaust. And it sounds like you're sort of in the same boat on that mod.
Yeah, and then the short throw, like shifter sort of enhancement, uh, fine. I didn't really notice a huge element there. What did you think of it?
Yeah, so same deal. I hopped into it, and it felt very, very similar to before the short throw shifter. I honestly gonna have to talk to Subaru to see like what exactly the short throw shifter changes. Like, is it like a 10%, like a 5% shorter throw, or something like that? Because it's not exactly like when you modify your car and you go buy some aftermarket short throw shift or whatever, like it normally makes it, it's a very tight gearbox at that point. It's like a 50% reduction in the throw length there. But this, it feels like much more like a 5 or 10% reduction in throw length. And it doesn't actually change the feel of the shifter that much either. Like it has the same action through the gates. Doesn't change the experience dramatically for me at all. So I don't know, maybe if I get some more time in it, I'll find some more things that I like about it. But as it stands, yeah, I mean I'm sort of in the same boat on the short throw shifter as I was on the exhaust. But like I said, I still think that I need some more time in it to sort of come to a conclusion.
If you want to hear the exhaust, Byron did a great update. Associate editor Byron Hurd. You can just Google it, and you can find it on the site. And he has the regular exhaust note followed by the STI bass note, and you can sort of hear and feel the difference, which I think is cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I remember how like the shifter was so much a part of the STI, the essence of it, that made it a little bit harder to drive. So then when you get into, I guess I expect a little bit more for this? Maybe I'm over, my expectations were too high though.
I think they're perfectly reasonable expectations, honestly. So like the parts, I mean they cost a decent chunk of change
Yeah.
if you want to buy them from the Subaru accessories store, which is I honestly like it's a really cool accessories lineup that they have for
Yeah.
the WRX. Like so many STI parts. We picked these three. We also had the STI front strut bar installed, which
Yeah.
if you pop the engine bay, I think it looks quite nice in there. It's sort of tucked up, sort of close to the firewall, sort of a curved piece, and as far as how it affects handling, I guess that is a bit of a TBD. Um, it probably won't do a lot. Adding a strut bar to a car normally doesn't do a whole lot except for like at the limit stuff. So just around town, it's not like it's adding a massive new sway bar or anything like that that's going to dramatically affect the ride and handling. It's just a nice appearance thing and maybe a small performance add-on.
Yeah, I'm glad we did it. I don't anticipate we'll ever truly feel, its full usage at the limit. But hey, it's all part of this, portfolio. And, I think if you're going to buy a WRX, you want to have these sort of goodies available to you. Do you need them? No, of course not. But they're there. And I think, for the core enthusiast who, again, would buy a WRX, I could see them seeking this stuff out. It does make some sense.
No, I mean it's really cool that Subaru offers all that because I mean when you look at other OEMs accessories offers, like you just don't have this sort of choice out there. Like if you're trying to upgrade your Volkswagen GTI or something to take something that's around the same price point, like Volkswagen doesn't just offer like a ready to go set accessories list that is warranted and OEM everything. So if you want to modify your GTI, you kind of got to look at the aftermarket as opposed to some OEM tested and backed parts. So it's a cool thing that I mean Subaru's always done it, and it's just great to see them sort of continue to offer all of these parts. You can spend a stupid amount of money honestly on the accessories list, upgrading it like a whole ton of stuff. So yeah.
Sounds good. Well, that is all the time we have this week. If you would like us to spend your money, we would love to do that. That's podcast@autoblog.com. If you enjoy the show, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us get the word out. It's been fun hanging out with you this week, Zach. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.